What is up guys, Andy Forrester, Team Runner here. Welcome back to another video, and this is the Adidas Adizero Adios PRO 3 after 100 miles. Such a mouthful, isn't it? Hopefully they'll lose the Adios in the next version. It'll just be the Adidas Adizero Pro 4. That'd be good, rather than the Adios in there. But anyway, that's a side note. Welcome back to another video, and I'm excited to share with you guys how the Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 3 has been holding up after 100 miles. As with all 100 mile videos, I'm going to be sharing the wear and tear, how I've been using it, and if I will continue to use it moving forwards. Now, the word that comes to mind when it comes to this shoe, especially over the last few times I've used it, is indestructible. It's a funny old word to use with this shoe, but I kind of feel like this thing is built to last. Ironically though, it's not a shoe that I've been particularly reaching for when it comes to race day, and I want to share my thoughts all around this thing. It's an interesting one, but a good one. So if you're excited for today's video guys, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, and of course do consider subscribing to the channel for weekly running content. Let's dive into the wear and tear. So a quick apology, I guess. This thing is absolutely filthy because I was just using it out on the trails on Saturday. Very runnable trails, by the way, but yeah, it was a little bit wet and a little bit muddy out there. So you'll have to excuse me. I don't normally mind bringing muddy shoes on camera, but this is a bit filthy. So you'll have to try to see past the mud in some of this. But in terms of the wear and tear, let's go through it. We've got the upper, very good. No snags, no tears, no nothing. This thing is quite wire meshy. It's the best technical way I can describe it. Quite coarse, and in the beginning, Adidas is funny on sizing. I do struggle with Adidas, and I did have some rubbing issues at the top of my big toe. I did have it on the outside of the foot there, and I did have a little bit over the top. I guess the best way to describe it is over the top of the big toe knuckle area. A little bit of rubbing there, but either the shoe stretched or my foot is now used to it. Either or, I don't get any of those issues anymore. But the upper is holding up really well. As you can see there, very see-through, very light, very breathable, with some overlays and some kind of thicker materials which are kind of running in panels that kind of hold things together and give it some kind of structure, albeit not too much. And as I said, wire meshy type of material, very coarse, very thick, definitely feels like it's not going to wear or tear anytime soon. Light Strike Pro midsole. Oh my goodness, I cannot get enough of this stuff at the moment, which is one of the reasons why this thing has now got over 100 miles, because I've been using the Takumi Sen 9 so much, probably too much, and I just wanted a bigger helping of Light Strike Pro. It sounds stupid, but I love this midsole. It is so good, so cushioned, and after 100 miles, this is losing absolutely nothing. It is still as soft and bouncy as it was in the beginning. I love it, absolutely brilliant. Continental rubber outsole gives great grip. Looks like it doesn't, but it really is. I want to call it like sandpaper texture material. It really does have that kind of roughness, even though it looks smooth. It's very tacky, so it does feel really good out there. On some of the slipperier surfaces, like I was out on the trails, yeah, it's not going to be the best grip, obviously, but on most of them, it is phenomenal. Again, one of the best super shoe grips out there. Feel confident cornering in this shoe. Feel really good using it in 9 times out of 10 on most surfaces that I'm on. So overall, in terms of wear and tear, this thing's holding up really well. So how have I been using this shoe? Well, a very quick history. Adidas didn't normally do my size, UK size 13.5. It stopped at 12.5. Sorry, I'm normally a 13, but in Adidas I have to use 13.5 just because sizing's awkward. With the Pro 3, as per always, they launched it with a 12.5, but then I think in a later iteration of colorways and stuff, a 13.5 appeared, along with the same with the Adios 8, I want to say, or 7, and the Boston 11s. They just, that performance range that they have, the Adios range, they released our size, my size I should say, and I was over the moon. So I grabbed this thing, it was on discount, I think I paid 135 quid for it or something. Either way, it was the best investment ever. So I was about 6 months late to the party with this shoe, but then after that I just started using it and I loved it for workouts and long runs. But in the early days, I was getting a little bit of rubbing, as I said, in those areas. So I was using it sparsely. And then when it kind of got to 50 miles, I then started to put more in it because either my foot got used to the shoe or the material stretched or whatever it is. I don't get any of those issues now, and it's an absolute joy to run in. I have raced in this shoe once. I raced in the Nuant 9. There is a video on the channel about that, and I really enjoyed it. But with this shoe, what I found is it doesn't quite have It's so hard to explain, and I know a lot of you guys understand this when I say it, but I know some of you won't. If we go back to version 1 in a lot of super shoes, they were edgy, they were fast, they were streamlined, they weren't built for stability. They weren't built for what I would say the majority of runners. I feel like by version 2, 3 and 4 of these super shoes that we're now seeing, the platforms are getting wider, the bases in general are getting wider, there's wider areas through the midfoot area, there's a little bit more sort of structure to the shoes, and it just has taken away a lot of the edge. Now, when I've spoken to people about previous versions of the Pro, like the 1 and 2, they say that the 3 has very much turned into a marathon shoe, which I've got to say sounds exactly like the Vaporfly 3, sounds exactly like the Endorphin Pro 3, sounds like a lot of them, although I'd say the Endorphin Pro 3 from Saucony is probably still one of my favourite racing shoes. So with this, I guess I haven't tried the previous iterations because they never did my size, but I would agree this definitely feels like a more long distance shoe, much wider foot pad here. If you look down at the shoe, you've got foam coming out the sides, a much bigger landing area to use, and I just find that when I'm racing, I don't want that. I'm not interested in that. I'd rather squeeze my foot into something a little bit tighter, a little bit more streamlined, feel a little bit uncomfortable maybe, but also feel like I'm running fast. I know some people understand what I'm saying, some people won't, but for me that's just what I like to do, which is why I still love to run in the Vaporfly version 1s, because the vapor weave in that shoe is much tighter and hugs the foot better. So for me, that's where I feel like this thing is not quite up to standard when it comes to a lot of the racing I want to do. Yeah, it might be decent over a marathon, but with the initial issues that I had in terms of sizing and the rubbing, it was never a shoe that I wanted to risk. So after that, and now things are getting better, it's something that I now probably would consider for longer distance stuff. But, and like I've just done on the weekend, a good 90-minute long run felt really good. That's the run that took me over 100 miles. I would definitely now consider it now that it's stretched or my foot's used to it either way. But to be honest with you, it's definitely been more of a workout shoe than a racing shoe. Appreciate that was a bit of a long ramble, but hopefully you understand my rationale as to how I've been using it. So will I continue to use this shoe moving forwards? Absolutely, and I want to touch on that word indestructible, because that is how this shoe feels. It really does feel indestructible. That's from the upper being quite coarse, quite tough, quite, you know, literally it just feels so kind of just unbreakable, indestructible. That's why I'm thinking of this word when I talk about this shoe. And the midsole, the fact that I feel like it's lost absolutely zero. Like with the Endorphin Pro 3 from Saucony and some of the Vaporflies, there are points when in and around the 100-mile mark, you kind of start to feel like it's just losing a tiny bit of the edge, like it's still a racing shoe, and I migrate a lot of those into my training when I feel they're done with racing. But this thing feels like it's lost nothing. Like I feel like I could lace this up and it would still feel brand new. And isn't that what we want when we're investing heavy into these types of shoes? I mean, when we're spending our own money, which I did with this thing, I'm thinking to myself, I want to get a lot of miles out of this. And when I've done the miles in the racing side of things, I want to get it in the training. And I just kind of feel like for me, this could easily be like a 300-400 plus mile shoe. Obviously, I'm nowhere near it yet, but some of the feedback I get from you guys as well in some of these Pro versions 1 and 2 and 3, people that have put way more miles in it than me, have said they've got way over 300 miles in them. And for a racing shoe, that's brilliant. That's like racing shoes. I guess a lot of people retire them from racing between 100 to 150 miles and then just move them into their training and just eke them out as much as they can. But if you can continue racing in it and use this way more than that, then brilliant. And that's why I feel this is quite an indestructible shoe. It really does feel like it's going to take a lot to break this thing down. So the upper combined with this midsole, which feels absolutely incredible, and the grip, which is still gripping just as good as new, makes me think to myself, is this shoe ever going to break down, and what mileage is it going to get to? So that's, I guess, where you guys come in. Please do let me know in the comments below how many miles you have in your Adidas Adizero Adios Pro 3. I'd love to hear it if you've got loads of miles in them, if they're still going, and when you felt the midsole started to go, deteriorate, break down, or the upper failed on you, the grip went, whatever it is, I'd love to hear from you, because obviously for me, I'm nowhere near that going, but feedback from you down in the comments is hopefully going to help other people make some good informed decisions when they look to buy this shoe. And in terms of, I often do comparisons at the end of these videos. And as I've talked about highly in this video already, Vaporfly, Endorphin Pro 3, two of my favorite racing shoes, I guess, and mixing them up, I think, to be honest with you, I would still choose those two shoes over this one for racing. But for a marathon, wow, I guess I'm going to have another marathon training block coming up at some point, and I might have to use this on some of the long runs just to see how I feel, because I've got to be honest with you, when I'm using like the Alphafly or the Vaporfly, or the Endorphin Pro 3 from Saucony, I just feel like those shoes are just made for that longer distance. And I know this is as well, don't get me wrong, but I feel like I've got the edge in those shoes. Even the Alphafly, I feel like I've got that edge. And I just don't feel like I can find top gear in this shoe. I feel like it's a cruiser. I feel like it's a fast cruiser, but I don't feel like it's the fastest option that I have. But I'd love to hear if it's a staple in your running shoe rotation and racing, or I'd love to hear if you use it in training, but you choose another shoe when you go into race mode. And if so, why? Is it the same reasons as me, or is it different? Or if you're a massive Adidas fan, I'd love to hear if you just race in them. Just let me know. Let everyone know in the comments below. That's it from me today though, guys, for this 100-mile update on this shoe. I'd love to hear your thoughts, as I said, in the comments below. We'll chat down there. That's it from me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do consider giving it a like, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content. I'll see you in the next one. Until then.